Minutes past the hour, so I think it's time that we go ahead and get started. Today, I am so very happy to introduce Tina Bronson. Tina brings more than 25 years of experience in nonprofit leadership to her role as incoming executive director for Alexandra House. She specializes in mission-driven fundraising, strategic communications, and organizational growth. Over the last several years, Tina has also led the storytelling and philanthropic strategy behind Linus's Pet Haven, expanding support for pet safe sheltering initiatives. So I am just so very excited to have you with us today, Tina. It really is my pleasure to welcome you to this space, and we're so grateful that you're able to join us. So, Tina, please take it away.
Well, thank you, Danielle, for having me. I am excited to be here. Uh, so first, welcome everybody who is joining us, and I am glad you are all here. And I do want to just preface it and say that this is not going to be a polished success story. This is going to be an honest reflection of what it took to come from just an emergency shelter into a pet safe shelter. So you're going to get some of the missteps that we made along the way as well. But before I jump into that, I'll tell you a little bit about me. Um, so again, Tina Bronson, Executive Director, incoming at Alexandra House. I use she, her pronouns. And I have been with Alexandra House now 12 years, beginning as the Director of Mission Advancement. And that is the role that I was in when I was able to start bringing Linus's Pet Haven into reality and into its present place that it is within the org. So I really led it from conception to expansion, and now stepping in as the executive director. So I've really seen it from all its different angles. Um, and it's been an honor to be a part of that piece and this piece of growth within the organization. A little bit about me. I have a dog named Tiva. She's pictured here in our Purple Thursday photo with my daughter, Alina. We also have two cats, Smudge and Spirit, who are bonded brothers. And then I have a 21-year-old son with my partner, Daryl. So full family, but only Alina and Tiva got pictured in this because they were the only ones agreeing to be part of Purple Thursday last year. Um, so a little bit, just kind of a tease about Linus's Pet Haven and how it kind of came about, and I'll go deeper. Um, a survivor approached me, directly reached out, and wanted to get involved in sharing their story with Alexandra House and their journey. And as part of her journey, she shared why she couldn't actually use our emergency shelter services. And that was back in 2018. And she came back and said, I really want to be part of what a solution could be so that other survivors don't have to have the experience that I had. And so she shared what she hoped to see change and how she hoped to be involved. So that's a little tease. I'll go deeper into her story in a little bit, but by the end of today's presentation, I'd like you to walk away with kind of a realistic picture of what it took for us, the planning, our pivots, the storytelling, and the fundraising, and then a toolkit that you could actually put into use. So that's my hope for today. So I would be remiss if I didn't start with why pet safe shelters matter. Don't forget the Pets Red Rover does an amazing job providing these details. Um, but you know, the nearly 48% of survivors delay leaving abuse due to fear of their pet safety. 71% report abusers harming their pets, and 1 in 4 survivors returning or delaying leaving. And I want you to sit with that 1 in 4 because for us, that's the reality. That's what we learned. We knew it, you know, anecdotally, big brain. We knew that that's the reality. But when our survivor came to us and said, like, she delayed leaving, that really hit home for us. So think about that 1 in 4. The fourth person on your call lines might stay trapped if they can't bring Fifi or Fido with them. And think back to last week's calls. How many calls were there? 1 in 4. And that's really what struck me, because that was a reality for our survivor, and that's what they said. And that's why Linus's Pet Haven exists today. Uh, so Candace is our why. And as I shared, like, we knew it's always been on the big dream list to have a pet safe shelter, to renovate, to expand. But it stayed on a dream board until Candace came to us. She called our helpline asking for safety, asking for solutions, but she could not bring her pets. And so she couch surfed, she stayed in her car, um, because she knew that if she left her pets behind, they would be harmed. And she said in her own words when she shares her story, and I'm going to read them for you. When I had to choose between my pets and my safety, I know that's what led me to that cabin where my abuser ultimately tried to strangle me. I know that if a pet safe shelter had existed, we would have left immediately. We would not have waited. So what makes Candace's story for us so remarkable is not only did she face this barrier, it's that she came back to Alexandra House and said, this is what I faced. I want to fix this with you. And so once she was safe, she came back and said, I want to fix it. And she actually participated in the Don't Forget the Pets 6-hour training program before she even came to us on how could she do this work as a partner. So she is a former participant, but she's also a board member now. And an avid fundraiser for the org and champion for pet safe shelters within Minnesota. And again, is the reason why our program has a name and a face. So we didn't build Linus's Pet Haven because we had it all figured out. We built it because Candace made it impossible to say no. So kind of how did we get started? Before we spent any money, before we wrote a grant, we started collecting evidence. So this is how we did it, and this is how you can do it as well. We built a community survey that we sent to partners, donors, community members. And one of the questions we asked was, if we had a pet safe shelter, would you refer survivors to us? Would you partner with us? And the response that came back was, as we suspected. The need was real, the referral base was there, people were ready for this in our community. We added one question to our helpline intake form, and it was, do you have pets that would need to come with you? And we tracked that yes response. And within a few weeks, we had the data we needed to put in front of funders that said, this is an absolute need in our community. The next thing we did was we called our Animal Humane Society and a few local rescues, and we asked them, how many times have you received requests for fostering or pet surrender due to domestic violence? And to our surprise, they were already tracking this information. They were our allies in this work, and we didn't even realize it. They were able to give us the numbers on surrenders and requests for help, and we just had to ask. So ask. Most of them are already having to track this data, and they have it for you. And I would say all of that took 6 to 8 weeks, and we didn't spend any money on that. But it did transform our ask from, we think we need this, to this is the proof that this is an unmet need. This is a barrier that our survivors are facing. So my takeaway, start with the evidence. Your community likely already has it. You just have to ask for it. So here's a learning that we had. So I'll just be perfectly upfront and honest on this. We thought giving it a name helps us talk about it. It helps with the marketing. People can wrap their head around something if we can name it. And giving your program a name seems really fun. It is fun, like coming up with names. And it worked better than calling it our Pet Safe Shelter program. But it's work. And it needs to be thoughtful, deliberate work. And it is fun until you realize you've accidentally named it something that has a similar name to another existing nonprofit in your community. And that happened to us. we wanted to honor Candace and all the work that she had done and her journey. And so in our talking with her, we said, Candace, could we name our program after your dog, Linus? And she was thrilled. And Linus had since passed away. This was a great way to honor her and Linus's memory. And so we came up with Linus's Pet Haven. We loved the name. We did our research. It seemed like it was a clean naming. Um, and we had been through this process. We had been through our breaking. We went through our ribbon cutting. And then we found out that we had inadvertently named it something similar. And that ED of Pet Haven, Minnesota, reached out and said, so we're getting calls about your organization and how to make donations to it. And we didn't know you existed. And we're like, we didn't know you existed. Um, and I will say we thought we had done our due diligence. We had been talking about it to our sister organizations within the DVSV world. We had been working with our Domestic Violence Foster Coalition. Um, we thought, we thought we had done the work, but we had missed a step. We had taken seriously conversations that we had had with Don't Forget the Pets, with our city and county regulations on staying away from words like pet shelter or pet rescue, because in that animal world, it put into these compliance and regulatory things that we'd have to deal with. And we are not an animal rescue and we're not an animal shelter. We're just pets are coming with their family to stay in our shelter. We're a people shelter. So we wanted to stay away from those words. So we thought we had it. But it turns out that we had created a headache for another nonprofit inadvertently. So I will say what our fix was. We had really good conversations with the executive director. We were so far down the path. We looked at renaming, but that wasn't going to work after all the media around Linus's Pet Haven and all the proposals we had put out. We said, okay, we will make sure in everything going forward, it will say Linus's Pet Haven, a program of Alexandra House. That is how we'll talk about it. It will go in all of our grants. It will go on our website and our press releases. Every time we talk about it, without exception, it will be Linus's Pet Haven, a program of Alexandra House. And we committed to doing the work if a donor called us, if a donor called them and we're confused, to make sure we stewarded those relationships carefully because they are donors in our community. I will say we didn't run into any issues to date where donors were giving to us and meaning to give to Pet Haven of Minnesota. But again, I just share it with the due diligence of make sure you do all the checking so you don't inadvertently end up where we ended up. And we told Pet Haven of Minnesota, we would share our story when we talk about like our learnings. Here's where we made a misstep. Here's how we corrected, and try not to do the same one. So Google, check with your partners, check Candid, do whatever you can to not end up where we ended up. So from idea to action. So we started planning early in 2023 with this really big vision. We wanted to do a renovation and expansion campaign, nearly doubling our footprint, going from 10 units to 18, with 10 being dedicated to pets or pet families. We had a really great grant opportunity for a very large renovation grant that would have funded about 75% of the costs, and we would fundraise for the rest. We didn't get that grant. We did all the work, but we didn't get it. And I will say, and as I've shared with Don't Forget the Pets and Danielle, it was one of the best things that actually happened because what we did was we pivoted and said, what can we get done with the information we have? So how we got to that point was we started partnering early. We started working with Don't Forget the Pets and Greater Good Charities on things like trainings, renovations, what would our renderings look like? What did we need to do? What was the liability issues we need to address with insurance? What were the regulations in our city and county? We started doing all of that work to build for this really big grant because we had to answer all those questions. But it also gave us this opportunity to talk to rescues again for our research. And we were building these partnerships. And when the grant fell through, we're like, we can't not do this work. We can't not move forward and become pet safe just because this grant fell through. This has to happen. It's a big dream. We still have that dream of renovating and expanding, but what can we do today? So when it fell through, I went back to my then ED, Connie, and said, can we continue to move forward? Can we scale back? I think we can raise this money if we make the project smaller. What if we just renovate 3 rooms? It's not the full dream, but we can still make it happen. And she said, okay, figure out what it'll take. We figured we'd need about $125,000 to renovate 3 rooms and add a backyard space and some kennels. And I said, I think we can do it. And so when I say like it was a gift, because we knew that a capital campaign was going to take us a couple of years to get through, this happened much faster. We went back to funders and with a much smaller plan, but it was credible because we had done all the work. We knew what we were adapting to, and we could make that go into action much sooner. And we had already built partnerships. So we did that preliminary work early. It didn't fall through. And that foundation really made our success more possible when we moved into fundraising. So do the work. Even if you can't do the big dream, you can then move into something smaller. I see a question. Do you want me to answer that now or hold?
That is entirely up to you, Tina.
So our pets are sheltered in room. We are one of the few co-sheltering within the state of Minnesota. That is the plan that worked with us and our space. And it works great because advocates they are not caring for the pets. The families are caring for the pets, and our rooms can accommodate it. It was also less expensive to do it that way because we just renovated the room space and then added a kennel to the backyard. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the fundraising part because I'm sure many of you want to know, how did we raise the money? So again, we had done a bunch of that work, getting renderings, partnerships lined up, starting to answer questions. But before we even launched a campaign or built our website page, or even sent an email about it, we were able to go back to one funder who had already been doing the work alongside of us, which was Greater Good Charities, and say, here's the data. We have Candace. Here's her story. Here's our why. Here are the plans you've helped us build. Here's what we think it's going to cost. Here's our plan to raise those dollars. Here are all the bids that we've already lined up with our contractors. And they offered us a seed gift of $25,000, filled out the grant application, made it happen. So we had the next piece of our puzzle. We had a seed gift. It didn't just fund a part. It gave us that credibility that said, this will actually happen. There's money behind it. There's a plan. There's a fundraising campaign going to happen. We have partnerships. We can move forward. So I would say seed gifts are psychological in that they build that credibility and they give people oh, this is already going to be successful. They've already got things started. So I encourage you to find that person while you're building these partnerships that could come alongside of you, whether that's financially or in kind, that can say, yes, we'll be a part of this. The other piece I will say is framing the program as a whole family initiative rather than a pet safe program really helped us in securing support because it wasn't mission creep. It was, this is a barrier eliminator. This is something our families need, and we're supporting the whole family. We know that families can come and they can focus on their healing if they're not worried about what's happening to their pets. They're less likely to go back because their pets are with their abuser if they're staying in our shelter. They can focus on their healing together. Pets bring comfort. So we really focused on that and used Candace's story to talk about these systematic issues rather than just an individual case um, or one person's story. It's a whole family story that we're supporting here. And that really was effective in also how we framed with the media, which I will talk about. Um, but before I get to that, once you have your seed gift, once you have your evidence, your survivor story, you build momentum through multiple channels, not all at once, but in a sequence. And I would argue that the first place you start with is your case statement, your statement of need, your why. If you can build that, everything else flows from it. It's really foundational. So you talk about why you need it, how you're going to fund it, what the money will actually do. Every other piece easily comes from that document. So I would say if you write nothing else, write your statement of need. Talk about your case statement. Then work on a web page. Or for us, we started with a blog post. And we started adding all the pieces to the blog post until we were able to move into an actual web page for Linus's Pet Haven. It gave our donors somewhere to land. We made a dedicated donation page for Linus's Pet Haven, which still exists on our website. And it just looks credible, and it gives you a place to tell your story and keep updates on how the progress is going. One of the other things that we did, and I highly recommended, it was very successful for us, was targeting our lapsed donors. Donors that were 1 to 3 years without giving. We pulled them into our database or into a database mailing list. It was about a little over 1,000 donors. We sent them a very specific letter saying, Linus's Pet Haven is something we're trying to build. Here's how much it's going to cost us. We invite you to come back and give again. And it pulled in 58 people ended up giving, which for lapsed donors was a huge return on our investment of time. We gave them links to our case statement and the blog posts, and we followed up with emails. It raised up nearly $10,000 from that one strategy and picked up all these donors again that are committed to the organization. So if you can make that happen, that's a great strategy for building your fundraising and bringing donors back in who might have stepped away to another organization. And then in every grant application and every proposal, again, we framed Linus's Pet Haven as a barrier elimination strategy that was innovative for our shelter and our survivors. Not a pet program. It was about safety intervention for families. And that framing really opened the door for us with funders who care about, again, whole family support and pets. And we were surprised, and you may have heard this if you've sat in other presentations, about the number of people who care for pets. And I would say it's because pets are uncomplicated. It's easy to love an animal who probably the worst thing they're going to do is, go to the bathroom on your rug or have, a sickness. Pets are uncomplicated. People are complicated. So having pets has made fundraising easier, having that strategy. And I don't share this flippantly, but the money that we raised for Linus's Pet Haven probably was the easiest money I've raised in my career. So I will put that out there. And the other piece that I will encourage everybody, think about the full costs when you are talking about your program. You want to be honest about the whole program that it costs. It costs more than you think, and you need to ask for what it truly costs. That means pets are going to come with their own needs: cleaning, wear and tear, pet food, beds, crates, all of those things. But they are also coming with their families who need to be sheltered and have food and advocacy services. And so that's really how we talk about our program is pets don't come here alone. They come with their families. Their families need support as well. And that's our whole family Linus Pet Haven support. And when we talk in programmatic support, it's here are all the additional costs that come from having this within our shelter program. So we have to have, replacement costs for cat post scratchers and bunny hutches and things of that nature. And we have extra cleaning protocols and cleaning supplies and pea gravel for the enrichment area that has to be replaced and fencing. That's a whole program cost. Name it, articulate it, fundraise for it. It will come. But you have to know what your costs are. Faces and paws. Um, so I love storytelling. Um, you're going to have the people who need the data. You're going to have people who need the heartstrings and the stories. Put them together and you have a story that people are going to support. You meet both of those needs when you put it together. And it moves minds, it moves hearts, and they can't, I mean, if it's outside of their scope, they're probably not going to fund it. But when you tell it both together, that's where we found it really works. We give people the hard data on this is how many people have reached out to us and we can't support them because we don't have a pet safe shelter. They move to action because we have articulated both the heartstrings and the data points. And that's what Candace's story really gave us. We call it our center. Candace became our center, her story became our center, not to be exploitive of her experience, but because her experience was real and she has said, I am going to be here to support this every step of the way. So we have her permission to talk about it, how it was impacted, her journey, and how she goes back out into the community to this day to talk about how to support pets and their families. So every press release, grant narrative, we talk about these people-centered stories with their pets. And as I said, it's a whole person, a whole family program. Yes, I saw in the chat, pets are family, and we talk about that. And that really changes how donor and the media pick it up when we talk about this isn't, Alexandra House is opening a new program. It's Alexandra House is responding to this need that our families have and that pets have in this community. So when we said our helpline data shows this multiple families are reaching out, we also said, here's this one person. And that one person's story is all these people multiplied that are making these choices. There is a need. Here's how we meet it. Here's how we meet it together. So making it newsworthy. I will say this over and over. Unless it's a slow news day, the media is not going to cover your groundbreaking. They're not going to cover your ribbon cutting. You might get local cable access in the local newspaper. And that's really what we thought would happen with ours as well when we put it out there. But what we centered with was one in four domestic violence survivors in Minnesota return to dangerous situations because they can't bring their pets. Here's Candace's story. Here's why we need to fix this. And that changed how we presented it. And we got more media attention at our groundbreaking than we expected. We had 4 media stations come, and we weren't expecting that. We planned for, our elected officials, our chamber, our board, and donors to come out, but it had a much larger response because of how we had framed it. We were prepared with staff being trained on how to be there and talk about Linus's Pet Haven and the groundbreaking, but we weren't prepared for the media outreach that we initially got. But by the time we got to the ribbon cutting, we were. We utilized our construction photos, and you see here one of our updates as continual updates to our community. We put that in our newsletter, we put it on our website, we put it in emails out to our community and said in social media and said, here's where we are with Linus's Pet Haven. Here's how much money we still need to raise. And we did these continual updates as things, as the sod was laid, as fences were put up, to keep our community engaged, and kept updating them on here's where the, the fundraising is. We need this amount of dollars to get there. We need partners to help us. And once we hit our our ribbon cutting, we had done a much better job of staging for that. But it was a really great way to keep people involved when we utilized photos, updates. Um, so I'll talk a little bit next on what we did for our ribbon cutting. Because we had the response we had at our groundbreaking, when we got to the ribbon cutting, I had a training guide for all staff who are going to be tour leads with all the talking points. All the shelter stops that they could go through in our shelter. We opened it up and said, okay, here, group A is going to go this path, group B is going to do this path, group C is going to do this path. Here are the people who are going to stay and talk to the media. And here's what we're going to say. So we all have it staged out so everyone knows what they're saying. I had FAQs on commonly asked questions and how to respond to it. And we made sure that we made that event an opportunity for all these people to come into a place where we don't typically open, our shelter. And we made it as an awareness building campaign and a partnership. And at our ribbon cutting, we had 7 media stations that came out and were out doing interviews. And then we had subsequent interviews afterwards. It was incredible. We sent out 2 press releases, and we did not expect that level of engagement. We didn't know what to do with 7 news stations in our tiny, living room, but we made it work. And I'm glad that we did the work on scripting out talking points and tour stops so that it was very coordinated throughout the day of the event. So I talked a little bit about partnerships, but these were some of our most enthusiastic partners that came out of our press releases and our media pitches about our groundbreaking and our ribbon cutting. Because when we started talking about it, we were sending letters to all of these local veterinary clinics and food supply companies and everything, saying, we're not experts in animal care. We need experts. Can you help us? This is what we're trying to build. So we didn't ask them for money. We asked them for expertise. We asked them to consider donating in-kind supplies. And we kept doing these reach outs saying, can you help us? Will you partner with us on this? Because you are already in the animal care space and we're not the experts. What they were able to bring to us were trainings on how to read animal behaviors in shelter. So all of our staff have been trained on how to handle animals in shelter, how to read their behaviors. What do you do with a reactive animal? How do you help participants help their animals adjust to a shelter space? And we continue to have those ongoing trainings because we have these partners who come in and help us with that. When we have issues, and we've had a couple with animal surrenders or reactive animals who can't stay in shelter, we reach out to our partners and say, how should we handle this? What are our resources within our community that can help us? Armstrong Ranch Kennels and Pet Suites have been instrumental in when survivors who cannot, like they have to go out of town for court or have other things that they have to attend to, they have offered to care for the pets so that our advocates aren't caring for them in shelter. So they'll go stay. And so that's been a beautiful partnership that's come out of it. So don't overlook these different service areas. They can be some of your strongest allies and help in creating awareness on fundraising, holding donation drives, getting pet beds. And the other piece I would say, consider getting reciprocal donation partnerships in place. Because if you're like Alexandra House, people love pets, and all of a sudden the local Girl Scout troop and the Honor Society are making pet beds for you and doing pet supply drives, and you end up with an overflow. And we don't want donations going unused, so we have set up reciprocal partnerships where we say, okay, Animal Humane Society, we got too many dog beds. Can we donate them to you? So they get back out to the community. And they do the same thing when they get too many leashes or too much dog food or cat litter. So consider reciprocal donation relationships so you can make sure that supplies don't sit on your shelves. Maybe they get to the local food shelf because it happens. And the other thing, we included pets in our holiday shop. So What that meant was any family that gets served in our holiday shop, if they have pets, we make sure their pets get supplies in the holiday shop as well. So pet food, toys, beds, litter, whatever they needed. Um, so that has really helped us on making sure that not only are we getting what we need as expertise and donations, but we're also giving back to others. So we're really developing this reciprocal relationship, because that's really important when you're building community for supports, that you are able to contribute things back. So that we found that as a big win. Again, partnership equals expertise plus visibility. It's not just money. It can bring money, but it's not just money. So results and lessons learned. This is some of the construction photos that we shared. We ended up opening a 3-unit that were pet safe, that were initially designed just for dogs. We were like, we think this is how many people we'll have. So each unit has an outdoor kennel that is accessed from inside the room. And then we have an outdoor pet relief space that the families can use. It's a beautiful space. I will share that when we had the doors open, January 2025, we were super excited. By June 2025, we realized, and we knew that it wasn't enough, but we really knew by June 2025 it wasn't enough, because so many of our families were utilizing these 3 rooms, but most of them were cat families, and that was a surprise for us. We ended the year with 23 cats and 19 dogs the first year, and we're like, okay, well, we can't keep putting cats in the dog rooms because then the dog rooms are tied up and we can't put dogs in them. So what that meant was phase 2. So by June of 2025, we had to launch phase 2. And we thought initially about $25,000 to make sure all of our doors on our units had these key-coded locks, because, kids love to do this thing with the handles and then the doors open and the animals run out and you have issues. So we had to replace all the locks on all the doors of our units. We needed to, get air filtration for allergies for each of the rooms if they had pets in them, enhanced cleaning. We needed shelves and scratchers for cats and bunny hutches and hamster cages and all the things that you need. So again, we have 10 units. 3 were dog specific. The other 7 we chose to make other animal specific. That way, if someone had an animal, we had a space for them. If they didn't, the room was cleaned and the animal didn't need to be in there. They could still have the air filtration in there if they had allergies. We were fortunate in that we had a donor who came to us and said, we will give you $7,500 as a matching gift to get you started. And because we had done all the work, we had sent impact reports after we had raised the first amount of money and got the campaign started, or got the campaign finished. Here's how you do everything. We were able to, by October 2025, raise $50,000 for our Linus Pet Haven and our renovations to renovate the last 7 rooms to make them pet safe. It was amazing. But we had done the work to begin with, and we just continued that campaign work on telling our donors what the money would be used for, how it was making an impact, and what, really how they were changing people's lives. The 3 things I wanted to tell you about to keep in mind is scope creep is real. You can have really big dreams. We still do, but what you can execute at the time, that's what you have to focus on. What can you execute and build on that? Start small and then add on. Once you have success, people want to give to success. Storytelling fatigue is also real. You will tell your version of Candace's story hundreds of times, but you have to refresh it. New data points, new voices, so that it changes as things change with you. So storytelling fatigue is real, and donor fatigue is also real. Multi-year projects need fresh messaging. They need successes for donors to keep moving forward. So just keep those things in mind. As I said in the beginning, I wanted to leave you with more than just inspiration. So here's a link that Danielle will put in the chat, and you can scan the QR code. This contains documents of what we actually used in real time during our campaign and fundraising phases. Everything was what we used. So please understand, like staff names I kept staff names and positions in there. All of our pieces, these are our documents. I share them with you for you to use and adapt. So the first one that is in here that you'll see is our case statement and our one pager that we used in addition to our case statement. And it really is the problem and our story and our solution and our ask. So I wanted you to see what we used. You're welcome to adapt it for your organization or not. It's however you choose to use these pieces. They are, I mean, this started before everybody was using ChatGPT. So maybe it's in there if you use AI, but this is what we did. The other thing I put in there was our community partner survey. So here are all the questions we used. And you can use those to gather your proof. I did not put our one question for our helpline screening because it was just, do you have pets? Yes or no? And that we tracked that piece. The other piece that I thought was really important to call out is what we call our operation and safety policy, which is one of the documents I wish we had in the very beginning, because this is the document that answers the questions like, what do you do if there's a reactive dog? How do you keep participants and pets separate? How do you deal with allergies? How do you deal with cleaning? So this is a document we still use to go renew our property and commercial insurance. And it's a document we shared with our city and county officials when they were asking, are you going to be a shelter? Is this like our dog rescue? Are you going to have kennels? Are there going to be lots of animals here? I wish we had that document in the beginning, but now we use it frequently. Now, I will say again, it's very specific to how many units we have and how our door locks are and things of that nature, but it's a guide that you can use for building your own. I included all of our press releases and the invitations we use for people, just so you have those samples. Our staff talking points, our tour guides, so that you could see how we scheduled flow, what the stories were, what were the frequently asked questions we got. So you can look at that. And then I took a run at giving you some timelines. I will say when we did our groundbreaking, I didn't have a timeline on how to do it. I actually had to Google, how do you host a groundbreaking ceremony? Because I had never done it before. I worked with our Chamber of Commerce. We did that planning in about 4 weeks. Again, by the time we got to ribbon cutting, we knew better, we did better. So I will share that. I just tried to put things in here that you could utilize that gets you further than where we were. So I hope it's helpful. Again, you don't need a perfect plan. You just need to get started. You collect your evidence, you get your story, and be willing to pivot when it doesn't work or some grant falls through in our case. But this is what it took to get there. The other pieces I will say on our website, alexandrahouse.org, you can search Linus's Pet Haven, is our webpage, our donation form, and our blog posts. Those still live there, and you can see what we did. So every media story, we put that back on our blog to share that back out, and use those stories as another way to touch other people, to say, here's the coverage of Linus's Pet Haven and what we're doing. Okay, I know that I went through a whole bunch of stuff, so I wanted to leave some time for you guys to ask questions. I know there's been a whole bunch of questions populating in the chat. So if you want to ask questions about your process, what your barriers you're facing, thoughts about what your takeaways are, I'd love to hear those. And then if you already have a pet safe shelter program and you can share what's worked in the chat, this is a community of learning and we're better together. So I'm certainly not an expert. This is just how Linus's Pet Haven happened here. So I'm happy to share what I have and take questions. So
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Tina. That was such a fantastic presentation. And this toolkit I know is going to be so fabulously helpful for folks who are kind of at the beginning of their journey. So we do have a lot of questions in the chat, but everyone, please feel free to add additional questions now, and we will get through as many as we possibly can today. But we'll go through some of the earlier ones just to get us started. Now, Tina, I know you touched on allergies a bit, but Margarita, fairly early in our presentation, was wondering how you do handle guests with allergies. Could you sort of walk us through that process? And has that been a problem that you've encountered so far, other clients who may have allergies to pets?
we thought that was going to be an issue. We really did. We we have not found that to be an issue. Um, and And it's surprising, but good cleaning protocols, good HEPA filters in each room. And because we put in different filtration systems through COVID, that has helped. So I would say I hear you. That was an issue our staff raised for us. That is what our board members raised. It is not, in our experience, it has not been a barrier to moving forward with this program. And I will say that all of the participants that have come through in the year and a half we've had our program have been wildly accepting of the fact that there are pets, even when there are barking dogs. And you think that's going to be a problem. It has not been a problem. Um, we do hotel motel options. So if it were a problem for a family that was highly allergic, they know coming in that we accept pets, we can also accommodate that, but that has not been an issue for us.
That's great. Thank you, Tina. And I will say, of the many shelters that we work with at Red Rover and at Don't Forget the Pets, that is a common theme that we hear that allergies is one of the number one concerns that shelters will list when we're first getting started. But once they are up and running, they find that that is actually much easier to navigate than they maybe were anticipating. So Tina and Alexandra House's experience does not stand alone. Next question, Tina, from Angelina. This is a little bit longer with a little bit of context. So it sounds like Angelina's shelter just completed two back-to-back capital campaigns for their new facility and renovations. They've looked at some smaller scaled projects, but they're curious, what does it look like from an operational standpoint to run a program like this? They're specifically concerned about who is going to clean out the kennels, who's going to remove pet waste, particularly if the clients maybe are not doing that or are not meeting your expectations.
That's a great question. And so far, for the most part, participants, because in our situation they are co-sheltering, they are charged with taking care of their kennel, and they are charged with making sure that their room, doesn't have pet waste in it. And that has not been a significant issue. Yes, you're gonna have some that have left their cat, litter box or whatever. But so far, it's not been an issue because when they come into our shelter, usually they're coming with very few belongings. We're providing them with everything. So if they aren't cleaning their litter box, they're taking up a dirty litter box with them. So I don't want to minimize it, but it hasn't been as big of an issue as we anticipated. Um, but believe it or not, we have so many people who, when they found out that Linus Pet Haven was happening, we have volunteers who are like, can we come and like help maintain the back pet enrichment area? And we're like, great, love that. So they help with that. And we do have facilities staff who end up having to do cleaning, and an advocate might have to step in and do cleaning, but it isn't to that level that we expected. We expected like, oh, okay, well, we're gonna have to be out there cleaning the kennels every week. Not to that level, because participants for the most part are doing that. And it's usually when they leave, you might have to go clean up a few pet piles, but for the most part, not been the issue that we expected.
That's great. We love to hear it. Um, Pretty straightforward question from Donna. So I'm gonna bump this up a little bit in terms of order. But Donna asked, what if a pet comes in with fleas? How do you handle that?
That hasn't happened, but I will say when pets come in, we have a separate intake room just for pets and pet families. And all of our pets have to go through some basic quarantining, till we get vaccination records and health records. And so they would have to remain in their room. And we would treat it just like any other. They have to get to the vet. We'd make sure they get to the groomer and remedy that. Now, we don't, I'm guessing most of you, if you have a shelter, you don't have carpeting, because carpeting is really hard to maintain. Um, we have hardwood vinyl flooring, hardwood-esque, I guess, vinyl flooring, so it's easy to clean. And so fleas become less of an issue when you have hardscape versus carpeting to deal with. But we have not had a flea case that I am aware of as of yet. Um, I know that that's not super helpful.
No,
If
I
we
think
had space, we would have a grooming area, but we just don't have that yet.
yeah, no, I think that's great, Tina, and I love to hear that. I think particularly for folks that maybe come from an animal sheltering background or maybe volunteer with their local animal shelter, we see fleas right all the time. Pretty much every pet that comes in has fleas. But the great thing about programs like this is these pets are coming from home environments. So they tend to be in a little bit of a different condition than a pet that you would see coming through an animal shelter. That said, fleas are a very common issue. Luckily, they're very easy to treat. And there is a medication that I highly recommend from my sheltering days called Capstar. It starts killing fleas within 30 minutes of being administered, unlike those monthly topical flea treatments like a Frontline or an Advantage, which you will still want to do. Capstar is a great addition. If a pet does come in with a flea infestation, you can get them gone pretty much immediately before that pet even has to go into a client room. So we always recommend that for folks to have on hand, and it is available over the counter as well. Let's see here. Another question. Can you share more, Tina, about some of the costs that shelters should expect when it comes to adding a pet program? You did name some cat scratchers, pea gravel, fencing, but are there any other expenses that you encountered that might be easy to miss or for a shelter to forget about when they are sort of budgeting for a program like this?
That's a great question. And I just went through this with our budgeting process. So when we look at what it costs to run our program, we factor in things like one of our advocates who really, we consider her our pet advocate. So her time on making sure that she is helping set up vet appointments, for screenings. Um, when we are like lift costs to lift someone to the vet to get the pet vaccinated. Um, if they have any type of special dietary needs and we don't have that pet food or pet medication that they might need. So those were some of the pieces that we hadn't specifically called out in our budget. But now that we've been through it a year, we're like, oh, okay, here are all the costs that are starting to be associated with keeping our pet safe shelter going. What I have found that's been very helpful is, again, naming the cost for fundraising and including it when you're talking about what does it cost to house a pet with their family. For us, on average, for a 25-day stay, which is what we found, pet families stay a little bit longer than families without pets, about $121 right now from when they come through our door to when they leave, from food, beds, vet costs, all the things that they need, was just the hard cost for them. The other piece, what we experienced, and this might happen for others, I don't know, but for us, we found that the dogs are reactive and don't like going through the hail doors. We are actually spending the money to enlarge those doors so that they have more room around them to go in through them. We have tried all kinds of behavioral management to get them to go through the doors, and they get too scared. So I would say opt for a larger door if you can. And that's an additional cost, but that was a learning for us on the dogs are reactive to enclosed spaces after experiencing abuse in their home. So, um, and then because of the way our shelter was set up, um, allowing participants access to the back enrichment area because their dogs wouldn't go through the dog doors was an added expense to shift how our security system worked. We had to change a fire door into a participant access door and then give it a key code so that they could get out, but only pet families so that we didn't have non-pet families mixing with pet families and creating liability issues. So think those things through.
That's great. Those are fantastic tips, Tina. We had a quick question from Alicia, who asked, does Red Rover offer consultation for those who are just starting out? Yes, Alicia, we absolutely do. And I dropped the link there in the chat as a response to your question. Please visit our Don't Forget the Pets project at don'tforgetthepets.org. And you can check out our coaching program. That might be a great fit for you if you're just getting started. Let's see here. Oh, great question from Anita. Anita is wondering if you have any recommendations or if there's a good way to find those first contacts. So first get connected with like-minded individuals or organizations that might want to partner with you. How do you do that first reach out? How do you find those people or those organizations, Tina?
Well, if you haven't gone through the Don't Forget the Pets 6-hour program, start there because they give you lots of ideas on where you can start talking. And honestly, for us, it was that education process of, well, what do we need to do this work? Okay, so let's look at construction bids. And when we started talking to the people, so our construction bid company, talking to city officials on, can we have pets in our shelter? What does that look like? When we started talking to our Animal Humane Society and local rescues, our questions were, are there other people we should be talking to? And they started helping us connect to these other organizations and resources. And when we started talking about in our community survey, honestly, when we said, hey, do you think that this is a need? Would you help support us becoming pet safe? And we got all this feedback from our own community saying yes. Those were the people we started talking to. Our board members were out there, talking about it as well. So people were naturally gravitating to it when we started talking about it and asking, do you see this as a need as well? Those were the people that we aligned with and became our first allies and were the connectors to other people like, hey, you should talk to this person. They support this. And when you start that work and then start looking in the space of where can you get funding for it and start adding it to grant proposals and uh, natural donor conversations that you're having, those, like, most people love animals and they just wanted to be a part of something that they thought was innovative, a need they didn't realize was real, that they hadn't even thought about. Like, those are your natural allies. Once you start having those conversations, they come alongside of you. And then that's where you start making those asks.
That's fantastic. Thank you. We are right at the hour, so I think we're only going to have time for one, maybe two more questions if we can squeeze them in. But real quick, we had a couple of people, Tina, ask about off-site sheltering options. So boarding facilities, doggy daycares. Can you talk us a little bit through how you decided to go with an on-site sheltering model? And if, even with that model, you ever leverage off-site boarding facilities or daycare facilities, what was that kind of process like for deciding to go the route of sheltering pets on site?
That's a great question. We did explore multiple options with Don't Forget the Pets. And as they are the experts in this and we are not, we really leaned into the recommendation that what was the easiest and most cost effective was sheltering in room. And we found that to be true because that would be hard cost to add a building or put it on site somewhere else. And when we started talking with our city and county officials, like, that got us into an area of kennels and rescues, and we didn't want to walk that regulatory line. We didn't want the added cost of having to bring on, a specific pet advocate or even veterinary care. Those decisions with not being able to move into a larger capital campaign really helped us cement on an in-room strategy. We have found it to work really well. Um, and I think for us, it totally made sense to bring it on site and in room. Yes, we looked at other partners. Minnesota has a Minnesota Pet Coalition that works with developing these relationships for fostering and other options. What our research has found, just even with our small group of asking people if they have pets, we would tell them, hey, we can't do sheltering on site right now. We're working on that. Would you consider putting your pet in this foster system? Most of them said no, and they wouldn't leave and they wouldn't put their pets in a foster situation. That again affirmed for us that we needed to do it on site in room. Otherwise, people weren't going to leave their situation. But yes, we do have relationships with Pet Suites and then the Armstrong Ranch Kennels that do that offsite when we need it.
Fantastic. Thank you, Tina. That was such a great answer. And it's wonderful to kind of be able to get into your shoes as you're making those decisions because offsite versus onsite, in-room versus, in an external kennel, those are all decisions that shelters have to make about what's going to work well. And there are pros and cons to each. But the model that Tina and Alexandra House ultimately chose is one of our favorites, Red Rover and at Don't Forget the Pets for all of those reasons. All right, everyone. Well, we are 3 minutes past the hour, so we're going to have to go ahead and end for today. If we didn't get to your question, I do apologize, but please feel free to reach out to us via email. You can reach out to us at Red Rover. You can reach out to Tina. Thank you, Tina, who just shared her email address here on the screen. So as additional questions come up, or if we didn't get to you today, please feel free to contact us. And I just want to once again say such a genuine thank you to Tina for being with us today, for sharing her experience and the experience that Alexandra House had creating Linus's Pet Haven, a project of Alexandra House. But thank you so much, Tina, for being with us. And thank you to everyone who was able to join us today. And Tina, I hope you are seeing the chat box right now with many, many thank yous and hearts and clapping emojis coming through.
Yes, thank you so much. It's been an honor.
Thank you. Well, have a wonderful rest of your day, everyone, and we will see you at our next webinar. Bye for now.